Beloved ones, again, I welcome you. Thank you, Brother Anthony, for the introduction. And I welcome each and every one of you as we continue our study on the book of Daniel, chapter 11. And we, beloved ones, this is the structure. This is the structure that we are dealing with. We have gone through the Persian period where we saw the rise of the Medes and Persians. We saw the 4 kings that arise in Persia. And we saw the rise of Greece. Then we went down to the Hellenistic period from 351 to 166 BC. We saw the Syrian wars between the king of the north and the king of the south. We saw the conquest of Palestine or the land of Canaan, because this war, the land of Canaan lies, directly between the north and the south. And so they were caught between these battles. And so during these wars, the land of Palestine was conquered. We saw that a second conquest of Palestine. So this was part of our first study. And now we're on verse 20. We're on verse 20 of this period, this Hellenistic or Greek period. And we're on verse 20, which is the taxman. Then we're going to move on to verse 21 to 32, which is the enemy of the Jews. And you have the Hasmonean period, or the period of the Maccabees, and their father was called Hasmon, and that is why the Hasmonean period. So it is the Maccabean Wars. And then from BC 64 to 476 AD, you have the Roman period, which is the rise of Rome. And then from verse 40 to 45 is the time of the end. And that is where we want to, get to the time of the end, so that we could know what is happening, in our days. But before we do so, it was needful for us to go through so that we can have, that perfect understanding of what will transpire at the time of the end. And so we will not go to verse 40 to 45 in this presentation. And so we would have to wait another 2 weeks before we go to the time of the end. But of course, we will cover, I'm not sure how much we could cover tonight, but we will try our best to reach onto the rise of Rome. So in verse 20, beloved ones, the taxman here is no other than the son and successor of Antiochus III, Antiochus the Great. And we saw him as one of the kings of the north. And Antiochus the Great, his son, Seleucus Philopator, he was the one who raised severe taxes upon the people. So he was a raiser of taxes. Because why? Because Rome had imposed some heavy, fine on him, and so he had to raise taxes very high. And also in the glory of the kingdom, and even the temple at Jerusalem raided, the temple at Jerusalem, even to gather money to be able to pay, his tribute. So he was the one who sent his tribute gatherers. He sent his tribute gatherers throughout the kingdom to gather this money so that he can pay. And he had this treasurer, Heliodorus was his treasurer, and he was the one he sent even to Jerusalem to raid the temple in Jerusalem. But within a few days or a few years, as was the case, because his father Antiochus the Great reigned for 36 years, but he himself only reigned for about 12 years. And within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So he was destroyed not in a war, not in a battle, but he was betrayed by his own treasurer. His own treasurer, Heliodorus, was the one who killed him and took the kingdom from him. And so, true to the prophecy, he did not die in any war or any battle, and he did not reign for too long, and he was a raiser of taxes. So he was the taxman. That was Seleucus, Philopater, which was the son of Antiochus, the third Antiochus the Great. So this is only one verse about him. Now we move on to the enemy of the Jews from verse 21 to verse 32. And the enemy of the Jews, as we know, is no other than Antiochus Epiphanes. And Antiochus Epiphanes, as we will see, was a type of Antichrist. He was a type of Antichrist, and he was the enemy of the Jews, and he did great. He brought such great destruction upon the Jews, upon the Jewish community. And so it reads that in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. He shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest places of the province. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his father's father. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil, and riches, yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the stronghold, even for a time. So verse 21, as I said, is Antiochus Epiphanes, and he was a great persecutor of the Jews and also of their religion. He did not like the religion of the Jews, And Antiochus Epiphanes, his name means God manifests. So his name means a manifestation of God. Manifestation of God. So in other words, he stand in the place of God. And so he was a vile person, very out of order. And he now was not the rightful heir of the kingdom, but his brother was older than him, and his brother Demetrius was the rightful heir of the kingdom. And so that is why they did not give him the honor of the kingdom, because it did not belong to him. But his brother was a hostage in Rome at the time, because when Rome previously invaded, they took Demetrius as a hostage. And so somehow he took advantage of his brother's absence and obtained the kingdom through flattery. He was able to speak his way in order to obtain the kingdom. And some said that he told his brother that he would hold the kingdom for him until that he returned from Rome. So I guess Antiochus himself was a smooth talker, and he was able to take the kingdom. And so he, in verse 22 to verse 24, he raised a great army, and he went against Heliodorus, because Heliodorus was the treasurer of his father, and Heliodorus was the one who killed his father and took the kingdom. So therefore, Antiochus now, he was able to raise an army and fight against Heliodorus, and who opposed him and destroyed him. And immediately, what he did, he replaced the high priest. At the time, Onias was the high priest, and he took off the high priest and he replaced him with his brother Jason, in an agreement for large sums of money. So this is what is happening there in verse 22, the arms of a flood. This is his great army that came, even also to the prince of the covenant. The prince of the covenant means the high priest. His hand was even upon the high priest. He took away, the high priest. After a league, verse 23, after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, because he made an agreement, with the high priest, but that agreement did not go as he suspected. He shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. In verse 23, as I said, he began very small, and through flattery, he was able to bring people to his side, through flattery and through his word, because he was not the rightful heir, but somehow he became strong and then he was able even to take the kingdom. So he had a few supporters at the beginning, a few supporters, but he became strong. And in verse 24, he shall enter peaceably in the fattest places of the province. He shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and the spoil and riches. And so he was a person that divided, the riches. He divided the spoil. He gave people large sums of money, so much so that he had a nickname, Antiochus, the madman. So he gave people, large sums of money, I guess, so that basically, I guess he was buying many people so that they could come to his side. So that's up to verse 24. As we continue in verse 25, he shall stir up his powers and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. The king of the south shall be stirred up to a battle with a very great and mighty army, but he shall not stand. For they shall forecast device against him. Verse 26, yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him, and his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down. What is happening in verse 25 and 26? He, Antiochus, he conquered the whole of Egypt from BC 170 to BC 171, except Alexandria. So that's what it is saying, the great army, and the king of the south came with a great army also, but the king of the south did not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him, and that is Ptolemy Philometor. His counselors betrayed him and caused his downfall. So that's the king of the south. That is what it means when it says they shall forecast devices against him. Yea, they that feed of the portion of his meat shall destroy him. So that is even his own counselors. And then when we go to verse 27, and both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at a time appointed. So there were some peace deals that were made after that between the king of the north and of the south, but of course neither of them kept to those peace talks. Peace talks, as we have, sometimes you have peace talks between Hamas and Israel, but these peace talks, never, they are never kept. So there were some peace talks, but the peace talks didn't last. And verse 28, then shall he return to his land with great riches. And so he went down to Egypt and fight because the peace talks didn't last. And his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits and return to his own land. So he returned from Egypt with great riches. That's Antiochus. But what happened is that while he was out, Jason, because what had happened, there was another priest. There was another priest that he put in place of Jason, because that other priest had promised Antiochus a greater sum of money. And so he had removed Jason as a high priest. And so while he was out in Egypt, Jason now created a coup to recover his priesthood. And Antiochus thought that it was the whole of Jerusalem, Israel, that, that raised up a coup. That's what he thought. But it was Jason who tried to regain the priesthood. And Antiochus came with a mighty army, and he destroyed 40,000 Jews. 40,000 Jews were destroyed. And that's why he is called the enemy of the Jews. And he polluted the temple and the altar with swine's flesh. So he made a sacrifice of swine's flesh on the altar of God. And he profaned the Holy of Holies, because he entered into the Holy of Holies where it was forbidden. That was only for the high priest to go into. So he profaned the Holy of Holies, and he took away the golden vessels and other sacred treasures. So that is what is meant in 28. Then shall he return into his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploit and return to his own land. And when we go down to 29, at the time appointed he shall return and come towards the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter, because again, at another time, he went down again to Egypt. And he believed again he would return victorious with great riches at the latter time. But it was not the same case for him. For the ships of Shittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So in 29 and 30, Antiochus went down to Egypt again, but he met with the Romans, because Ptolemy had asked the Romans for assistance, because of course the king of the south, the king of the north was always more powerful, because they had a much larger empire than the king of the south. And so what happened there is they asked the Romans for assistance. And so when Antiochus went down to Egypt, this time he was met, with the Romans. And so he could not, again enter into Egypt. So he returned grieved, and he vented his frustration upon the Jews. So he, Antiochus, he slew great multitudes. He plundered the city, and he set fire in several places, and he pulled down houses and walls round about him. Then they built a fortress to command the temple and kill many who came to worship, until the temple was defiled and deserted. He published a decree which obliged all persons upon pain of death to conform to the religion of the Greeks. And so the Jewish law was done away with. The heathen worship was set up in its stead, and the temple itself was consecrated to Jupiter, Olympus. And of course, he found some traitors. He found some traitors there to assist him. So that is what is saying here in these verses. So in verse 30, he met with the Romans and he went back to Jerusalem. His indignation was against the Holy Covenant, against the religion of the Jews. And of course, he had some people there, that had forsaken, God to assist him. And so he took away the daily sacrifice. He put an end to the daily sacrifice, and in its place he set up the abomination that maketh desolate. And so he set up, his statues. He set up his statues. He dedicated the temple to his God. And he banished, Jewish worship. And also he ordered everybody to succumb to Greek religion on the pain of death. So that is why Antiochus is seen as the great enemy of the Jews, and is seen as a great persecutor of the Jews, and is seen as an antichrist. And history records, all these things that he, Antiochus Epiphanes, did to the Jews. So that is verse 21 to verses 32. So he placed an idol upon the altar of burnt offerings. It is probable that the idol was Jupiter, because we find that they dedicated the temple anew to Jupiter Olympus. And this act banished the true worshippers of God. Those he made high priests also assisted him in this dreadful act. Now, you can read a lot about that in the book of Maccabees, because while the book of Maccabees is not amongst the books of the Bible, but it is a historical book that gives accurate historical account. It gives very accurate account of what Antiochus did and how he did it, and all the things that he did, and all the people that he killed, and that sort of thing. And I have here Second Maccabees, a few verses from Second Maccabees 6:17. But let these that we had spoken before warning unto us. And now we will come to the declaring of the matter in a few words. Eleazar, one of the principal scribes, an aged man, and of a well-favored countenance, was constrained to open his mouth and to eat swine's flesh. But he choosing rather to die gloriously than to live stained with such an abomination, spit it forth, and came of his own accord to the torment. So they were forcing people even to eat, swine's flesh. And if not, they would be killed. So they sacrificed the swine's flesh, they poured the blood on the altar, and they were forcing them, to eat it and to eat the flesh. And Maccabees made mention of Eleazar, one of those that stood firm, for the word of God, and would not do such act. And he himself, he went to be tormented. He died, for his faith and for what he believed. Now, Daniel chapter 8 also spoke of Antiochus Epiphanes, and it referred to him, as a little horn. And so when we read Daniel 8:9, it reads, and out of one of them came forth a little horn. And we know that the four horns were the four generals of Alexander the Great. And so out of one of them came the little horn, and the one of them that was the king of the north came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. So even to the people of God, and even against God himself. Because as I said, Antiochus Epiphanes means God manifested. So he, stands in the place of God. So even towards, and it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. And that refers to, the priests, the high priests, the people of God, that Antiochus would destroy. The stars, those that, shed light to the people of God, and would destroy. Yea, he magnified himself even to, the prince of the hosts. You see, he even destroyed, even the high priest. And by him, the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary cast down. And that is what we read of Antiochus, who took away the daily sacrifice and desecrated, the temple of God. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. And so we understood how Antiochus tried to convert all of the Jews into the Greek religion. You see, on the pain of death, he tried to convert everyone. So he totally forbade, the worship of God and the religion of God. And Daniel 8:13 said, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So that is Daniel 8. Apart from Daniel 11, Daniel 8 also gives us a perspective of this very same thing. Now, the cleansing of the sanctuary took place under Judas Maccabeus, and that was in December 25th, 165 BC. So the festival of Hanukkah is that festival that celebrates the cleansing of the sanctuary. That was 165 BC. Now, it was prophesied it would be 2,300 days. And if we go back 2,300 days, it comes to August 5th, 171 BC. And so there commenced in the year 171 BC a series of aggression upon the priesthood and temple and city of the Jews on the path of Antiochus. So Antiochus' episode began in 171 BC and it was terminated by Judas Maccabeus and the Maccabees 2,300 days in 165 BC. Upon this year, the relation of Antiochus and the Jewish people were peaceful and cordial. So before that 2,300 days, it was peaceful with Antiochus. So this was true to the prophecy. And so that was the enemies of the Jews, beloved ones. And we now move on to the other segment of Daniel 11, which is the Maccabean Wars. And simply the Maccabean Wars will, as we saw, Judas Maccabeus and his brethren who stood firm against Antiochus Epiphanes. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity and by spoil many days. And we saw that many days was 2,300 days. We saw how they were killed, how they were tortured. Those that stood up like Maccabeans, like Judas Maccabeus and others, Eliezer, would instruct, the people. But of course, many died and were killed. Now, when they shall fall, they shall be helping with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And there were some, as you always know, there were always some that had forsaken God and were more with the Greeks. But when they saw that what the Maccabeans were doing and they were resisting, so some of them came to help the cause, but they came to help the cause, for their own safety. And so if things would turn around, they too would turn around. But they were there. And some of them of understanding shall fall to try them and to purge them and to make them white. So of course, you had a test of faith. People's faith were tested. People were martyred. And people had to stand up for their faith and for their belief, even to the time of the end. Now that little phrase here is very critical, even to the time of the end. And that stretches, as we will see, that stretches from the time of the Maccabean Wars, the time of Antiochus. It stretches from there even to the time of the end with us in Revelation, where the Bible says they love not their life until death. So we have to keep that in mind. These, the people of God the saints of God, they always had to stand up for the faith. And they always had to die for the faith also. And that is why, I've said many times, if you are not ready to die for what you believe, if you are not ready to die for your faith, then you are not ready yet. When the Bible says, be ye ready, for in a time you think not the Son of Man cometh, to be ready is to be ready to die for what you believe. So to make them white even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. So that was the Maccabean Wars. Judas Maccabeus and his brethren, as they stood up for the word of God and as they resisted Antiochus, who tried to convert the Jews into the Greek and pagan worship. And now we move to the rise of Rome. And the rise of Rome, we're looking at 64 BC to 476 AD. And when we read Daniel 11:36, it says, and the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. And many people believe that is a continuation of Antiochus Epiphanes. In a sense, it is. And the reason why, and in a sense, it is not. In the sense that it is because we are moving from one Antichrist to another Antichrist. So it is the same vile personality, the same Antichrist, the same aggression against God and against the people of God. But this time we move from the Greek Empire and we move into the Roman Empire. So this king that shall come, he shall exalt and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper until what God has determined will be accomplished. You see, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. So his fathers before him had regard for the God Most High. But he now will have no regard for God, nor the desire of women. So that person would be celibate, and so he would not have any wife, and therefore it cannot be referring to Antiochus, because Antiochus was married, he had a wife, he had a son, his son reigned after him. So therefore that is not referring to Antiochus, but as we will see, it is referring to the papacy. It's referring to the papacy, the Pope, as we will see as we move on, because we're going from one Antichrist to another, nor regard any God, but he shall magnify himself above all. So he is God on earth. And he now, if you go back to history, just going a little forward before time, but we will catch up. The Pope wears a triple crown. And the triple crown means Lord of heaven, Lord of earth, and Lord of under the earth. It means that he's Lord everywhere. And so he magnifies himself above all. That is called God. Now, if we take a leap before time to Second Thessalonians, now that is way into the New Testament, which we will get to there at some point. But let us read a little insight so that we now can compare it back to Daniel 11. It says, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by a gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letters from us, as that day of Christ is at hand. So the people in the days of Paul wanted to know when would Christ return. And Paul was saying, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there coming a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he's God. Now, we're not explaining any of that at this point, but that refers here to the Antichrist who was to come before the return of Christ. And he was to exalt himself above all that is called God or worship as God. And that is the same phrase, that is the same phraseology that is used in Daniel 11:36 and 37, where he would magnify himself above all that is called God. Verse 38 and 39. But in his estate, in his place of dominion, in his domain, but in his estate shall he honor the God of forces. And a God whom his father knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, precious stone, and pleasant things. Now, when you analyze the term God of forces, it means demons, literally demons. So this person would have direct relation with demons. And he would, give honor, to these demons. Now, you have heard of, within the Roman Catholic Church, you have heard of Saints Saint Delima, Saint Martin, de Porres, Saint Cecilia, and a number of dead people, they say, dead people that have become saints. So these are deads. Now, these names and these people that they call saints, all these are demons. These are demons that, you know, they honor. These are demons that they provoke, because we know there is nothing like dead saints. Everybody is in the grave waiting for the resurrection. When you're dead, you are not conscious, you know nothing. And so these saints that, you know, they call Saint Cecilia and these saints, these are demons, the god of forces. So this person, and if you go into, you know, the Vatican and these churches, you would see, you know, gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things and all types of things, great paintings and things that they dedicate these things to the god of forces, to the demons. So this is a perfect description of what is happening. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with strange gods, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. So these are within the temples, within the churches, and he shall cause them to rule, you know, over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And so these demons that are being, you know, worship and honor, these demons, you know, they are in firm control of, you know, many people. And that's why a lot of people, you know, when you see they are devoted Catholics, when you try to speak with them, they say to you, "Koti mama meti mo se lana witi, and yen party we la nothing, not taking them out from there." So these Catholic Church are the strongholds of demonic powers and demonic forces, the god of forces. So that is the rise of Rome, and it moves from, you know, one Antichrist, Antiochus Epiphanes, and it moves on to the other Antichrist under the Roman power. And we're going to take a closer look at this, because we saw that in Daniel 8:9, it says, "And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great." So this little horn was Antiochus Epiphanes, and it represented the Antichrist. And I want you to see also that in Rome, there also was a little horn that came into power. Now, when we look at Daniel 2 and the image of Daniel 2, it speaks of Babylon, which was 605 to 553 BC. And as we have seen Medio, we watched Medio Persia, then we watched Greece, and now we are at Rome. And Rome came into power in 168 BC, and then you have the two legs of Rome, and then you have the feet of iron and feet of clay. Now that represents the revival of the Roman Empire. But we will not go into that as yet, because that is the time of the end, because the scripture prophesied that the rock, Christ eternal, will hit the image on the feet and destroy the entire image and that rock will grow into a big mountain, which is the kingdom of God. So Daniel receives another vision from God, and it gives you details of the vision. Now Daniel saw 4 beasts, and you know beasts represents kingdoms or political powers. There were horns and heads, which represent subdivisions of political powers. There were wings, which represent speed and swiftness. There were winds, which represent war and strife, and sea represent multitudes of people. So these are all symbols in prophecy. So Daniel saw a lion, you know, with wings, and this lion with wings represented Babylon from 605 to 539 BC. Daniel also saw a bear standing with 3 ribs in its mouth, and that represented the chest of silver. And we saw that was Media Persia, the 2 arms. One arm is Media, one arm Persia. We saw that. Daniel saw, you know, the ram with 2 horns, as we saw in the last time, and the 2 horns we saw representing Media Persia. The one was longer, and it came up last, and we know that Persia was more powerful than Media. Right, so we saw that. Then we saw the leopard, and the leopard represented Alexander the Great, and the 4 heads of the leopard represented the 4 generals. We saw that, and of course, the little horn which came out of the king of the north, which was one of the generals of Alexander the Great, which was of Greece, and it lasted until 168 BC. And we also saw that the goat or the ram came from the west, and it stood on the whole surface of the earth. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between the eyes, and the goat magnified himself exceedingly. But as soon as he was mighty, the large horn was broken, and in its place came up 4 conspicuous horns towards the 4 winds of the heaven. So we've seen all those things. So that is just a recap of Alexander the Great with the one horn, and Media Persia, you know, with the which is the goat. And we saw the 4 generals. Seleucus, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Cassander. These were the 4 generals that we saw that came out of Greece, out of Alexander the Great. So we saw all these things in the first presentation. So that is just a recap. When we read Daniel 7:7, after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast. And that is where our interest is, because we now go into the 4th beast, and the 4th beast is the 4th empire, which is Rome. And this dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. And it was diverse from all the beasts that before it, and it had 10 horns. So these 10-horned beasts was indeed the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire was so dreadful that there was no name given to the beast. So it was like a beast that ate humans alive. And so this represented Rome, and Rome had 2 legs. And the 2 legs, it means to say that the Roman Empire was divided. It was divided into Western and Eastern Rome. Now, Eastern Rome retained the name, the Roman Empire, and Western Rome retained the name the Roman Empire, and Eastern Rome was called the Byzantine Empire. And so the capital of the Byzantine Empire was in Constantinople, and the Roman Empire, the capital was in Rome. So this represents the two legs of Rome. And then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth was of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, breaking pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than the other. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another king shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a times, and a dividing of times. And so we see here that the Western Roman Empire, the western side, was divided into 10 regions. Because what happened, these barbarian tribes from the north, they invaded Western Rome, and they conquered Western Rome, and they divided Western Rome amongst themselves, whereas the Byzantine and Eastern Rome continued for over 1,000 years, until, of course, it was taken over by the Ottoman Empire, which is the empire of the Turks. So it was divided into these 10 regions, and these 10 regions represent the 10 horns on the beast, right? Represent the 10 horns. In verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them a little horn. There came up a little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and the mouth speaking great things. And so under the Roman Empire, there was again another little horn. And that is why that little horn here represents again the Antichrist that is against the things of God, the word of God, the people of God, the worship of God. He's against all those things, and it had eyes like a man. And it is saying there, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 horns left, and the little horn in the middle. So the little horn destroyed 3 horns, and it became the 8th horn. Now the 3 horns that were destroyed were Aryan kingdoms. Now, if you do not know about Dr. Arius, you should read up on Dr. Arius. Dr. Arius was a Church of God. And the harvest resulting from the seed sowing of Dr. Arius had brought into existence 3 nations known as the Aryan kingdoms. And they were the Burgundians, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. The Pope was raised to spiritual power over the Roman state, and by the consent and agreement of Emperor Justinian of Rome, church and state were united in the year 538 AD. War against these powerful adherents of Dr. Arius, known as the Aryan kingdoms, resulted in the overthrow. 3 crowns thus fell, and 3 kings were plucked up by the roots in fulfillment of Daniel 7, 8-25. The last one of these 3, the Ostrogoth kingdom, fell in the year 538. So the last of the 3 horns fell in 538. Thus, we have the final overthrow of the apostolic church and the woman driven into the wilderness. When the 1,260 days or years, the 40 and 2 months prophetically announced for sojourn there are completed, reaching to 1798. We find her at that date coming forth again and given religious liberty to pronounce the truth, which for so many centuries had been trampled under the feet of tyrants, who themselves had become drunk with the wine of Babylon from the golden cup of the murder of harlots. Now, this was taken from the history of the true religion. If you have not read from the history of the true religion, you should do so. The history of the true religion is located on our website, BibleTruth.biz. You could get the true religion on there. What that is saying here is that the papacy rise to its full power in 538. It lasted, according to the prophetic utterance, for 1,260 days. In 1798, the Pope was taken captive by Napoleon and imprisoned, and this brought the end of the reign of the little horn. And you can read about what is known as the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages is a time similar to the time of Antiochus. Epiphanes, because this is the very same little horn Antichrist power that persecuted the people of God. And of course, some of them went into hiding, and after that, they received religious liberty from America. That is the prophecy in Revelation 12, where the earth helped the woman, where she was kept until the earth helped the woman, and the church found its religious liberty after that in America. So the free horns that were extinct, the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. So the Alemanni were the Germans, the Burgundian, the Swiss, the Franks, the French, Lombards, Italians, Saxons, English, the Suevi, the Portuguese, and the Visigoths, the Spanish. So these were the 10 divisions and the free that were plucked off by the roots. And so the little horn power is really the Antichrist. And Daniel 7 gives us 10 characteristics that identifies the little horn power. And according to Daniel, this little horn power rises out of the Roman Empire, arises among 10 divisions of Rome or Europe, arises after 10 divisions are established, uproot 3 of the kingdoms, has a man as its head with eyes and mouth, persecutes God's people. It's different than the other 10 nations because it's a religious power. That is why its look was different. Speak blasphemies against God, change times and laws, such as the beginning of the year, such as the beginning of the day, such as, the date of, the supper, and all these things, and have power for time, and half a time, which we saw 1,260 days. Now, when you consider all those clues that Daniel gave us, this fits to the T, the papacy, to the T. Now, we will not go into proving one by one how the papacy fulfill every single one of those things. But maybe sometime in the future, we can again look at them. But through all this, we understand that we move in Daniel 11, we move from the little horn of the Greek Empire, and then we move to the Antichrist, or the little horn of the Roman Empire. Now, this is very interesting because when we read Daniel 7 and verse 21, it reads, And that is critical for us to understand. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. That horn prevailed against the saints. And the Fox Books of Matters, that is another book that you have to look into, because it speaks of the martyrdom of the saints of God during the dark ages in the hands of the Roman, the papacy, the rule of the papacy. So indeed, it prevailed against them. But verse 22 says, until the Ancient of Days came. And the Ancient of Days refers to Christ. It prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So this is saying to us that the little horn power, which is the Antichrist power, will make war against the saints of God until the return of Christ, and until the kingdom of God is handed over to the saints. And that is where, and it means to say, because we saw that the little horn power reigned from 548 to 1798, which means to say there is another little horn that has to rise again just before the return of the Messiah. Another little horn. And so that other little horn will come out of the revived Roman Empire. And it will come at the time of the feet, the 10 toes, and the feet of iron and clay. Now we saw the beast, in the beast with the 10 horns, 3 were plucked off, and the little horn was there, and so there were 8 horns. But in the last days, we will understand there will be 10 horns, not 8, 10 horns. And there will be 10 toes. And so the 10 toes will represent the 10 horns of the revived Roman Empire, and the stone will hit the image with the 10 toes. So in the days of those kings, which the reign of the 10 kings, and I believe that these 10 kings will be 10 of the most powerful European empires or countries that will give the power and strength onto the beast. But we will study that at the time when we come to the last little horn that shall rise. And that is why we read in 2 Thessalonians. And that is where 2 Thessalonians, as we saw, will come in again to play. Because 2 Thessalonians will take us to where we want to go. which we saw. Let me just bring it right. Which 2 Thessalonians tells us, that just before the coming of the Messiah, then you will have, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he has God seated in the temple of God, showing himself to be God. That is where 2 Thessalonians will come into play. And so we will look at this at the end time, at the rise of the last little horn, which is the Antichrist, the last Antichrist. Because remember, Christ said, many Antichrists shall come, but the last one shall be the most dreadful of them all, which is the last one to rise. In closing, beloved ones, closing thoughts, Daniel 7:26, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And that is the dominion of the little horn, the last little horn, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. So in spite of all that will take place, the kingdom and the greatness of the kingdom will be given to the saints of God. They're given to the saints. But, however, the saints are called, as we will see, to overcome. As always, in every dispensation, the saints were called to overcome. And in our dispensation, they are called to overcome. And as we go forward, we will see that we are called to overcome the beast, to overcome the mark of the beast, to overcome the name of the beast. We are called to overcome these things, and we ought to give up even our very life for the sake of the kingdom. So these beloved ones, this takes us to the end of the period of the rise of Rome, which was from verse 36 to verse 39. And so in the next study, we will go to verse 40 to 45, which refers to the time of the end.
Okay, we want to thank our dear elder Bernard Augustine, mighty man of God. We want to really thank him for this wonderful Bible study on the Sabbath night. We give God praise for everything, for the word, for his word. As we can see, saints of God, we need to open our eyes because the time is drawing nearer and nearer, and we need to know what is taking place as the prophecy is being fulfilled. We thank God for each and every saint of God that is present. I see Brother Daniel with us. I thank God for him and other saints, Sister Lena and other saints for the Church of God. We thank God for all of you all, and even saints from the Suffrabonzan Church of God, everyone that was present. We thank God for each and every single saint of God. So we give God praise, we give him honor